Welcome, Legacy Makers, to this episode of the Legacy List. As you can see, I've changed it up a little bit here. I'm in my nursing chair. I'm just kind of lounging around and getting relaxed. My knees do hurt a little bit, so I just thought I'd put up my legs. I'm going to be covering everything about having a new baby, or having a baby, I should say, and what I wish I knew before. And I think that it's very valuable to know that information because sometimes you don't have certain resources, or sometimes you're getting super overwhelmed. And then sometimes you're just reluctant to ask for information as well. So I wanted to have one episode that really covered the most important things that one should know about, or at least be mentally prepared for before they have a child. So this episode is really for expecting mothers, even for the mothers that have had a child before, and maybe you're going down this journey again, and for anyone that's just curious. And if you're not on the motherhood journey as of yet, and you're just curious about what it would entail, I think this is a really good episode for you. And there's beauty in all the things that you learn throughout your experience in being a parent. And to a degree, it is kind of like you're winging it sometimes, but you're following your true instincts. And I think that always is a good guiding light. So keep that in mind always. My first theme is going to be basically around mental prep so that you have a smoother transition. If you're expecting mom, the most important prep that you can have is internal. So what I'm talking about right there is basically your emotional state, your mental state before you have a child. And sometimes there can be a lot of fear, there can be anxiety, and you don't know who to talk to about that. I know that when I was expecting, I was just so afraid of like, oh no, what if I'm not a good parent? And I did a lot of like future worry. So even in terms of like thinking about my child as a teenager or as a young adult, I'm like, oh, what if I like mess them up and screw them up? But then I then had someone reframe that thinking and said that you're not going to be going down that path for quite some time. So you don't need to worry about it now. Enjoy your child in the phase that they're in right now. So that really, really reassured me. So my first point is really talk to someone if you're feeling anxious. If you're feeling anxious about the labor experience, about becoming a parent in general, about how you feel as though your family dynamic and your relationship with your partner is going to change once you become a parent. If you feel as though your foundation as a couple is not strong right now, maybe even consider couples counseling so that you can be approaching parenting in somewhat of a similar way. And let's say you're expressing all these fears to someone and they're just being a good ear. They're just listening to you. And that in itself can be very helpful. They may not necessarily say to you like, oh, by the way, everything is super rosy and you'll do fine and you won't ever have any issues. So that may be naive for someone to say that as well, that, they don't want to misguide you, but just in having someone listen to you is more than enough sometimes. So talk to someone that you trust, maybe even go for counseling if you need to, do some journaling, get it out of your system so that mentally you can feel pumped and ready and positive about becoming a parent and also going into labor as well. So that would be one of my tips in terms of mental prep for a smoother transition. And my other tip is ask a lot of questions from other moms. So whether they're moms that you have known for quite some time and you're well connected to them, even if their kids might be a little bit older, they still remember quite a bit of what they went through. And also, I've noticed that moms love to share what they learned and what they wish that someone else had told them. They love to pass on the baton of wisdom, basically. So consult any mom that you know. And even if it's a friend that you haven't touched base with in a while, they're not going to mind. Like they're going to love that you reached out to them and that you see their opinion as being valuable. So I know I reached out to some friends and even family members regarding like the nursing situation that I was having and how difficult it was to get my milk supply going. And just in reaching out to a couple of people, I got some very helpful tips and it made a huge difference. So reach out to other moms. And just to add on to that, let's say if you're not feeling that confident around taking care of a baby, you just feel very anxious. You're like, okay, I haven't been around young children or babies much in my life. So how am I going to do this? Maybe go hang out with one of your friends that has a young child, that has a baby, and see their day to day, get a sense of what it's like to take care of a baby. And you'll have fun along the way too. So I would suggest doing that so that you could be more mentally prepped for what's to come. And then my other tip, just for your mental health, is to go for walks. I mean, that's also for your physical health too. Obviously, go for walks and sleep as much as your body allows. Sometimes it can be very hard to actually get a good night's sleep when you're pregnant. Reason being for the walking, it's going to clear your mind, relieve any stress, and you're going to be getting the blood flowing, good for yourself and good for the baby. I really regret not doing this as much as I could have, because I have a 9 to 5 job, sitting at the desk at the computer. And then when I would come home, I would kind of like prep some dinner and just chill out a little bit or catch up on a little bit of work. So because of that, I didn't do as much walking as I should have. I did sometimes like walk during lunch break, but not as routinely as I should have. And because of that, the consequence was, I think, that my knees got really weak. So they got so weak that right now, but let's say if I drop something and I have to pick it up, then I would have to like get some leverage by holding onto a piece of furniture, or someone else nearby to pick myself up. But luckily, my knees are getting a bit stronger, but they're just not as strong as they used to be. The knees are kind of reacting to the amount of weight that I was carrying for the past 9 months, and I'm still a little bit heavier than I usually was before. So they're responding to that, and I really need to build strength in my glutes and all over my knees as well. So the knees are reacting to everything else. I've gone for physio, that's helped. And I did learn a bunch of stretches since then, but I think I could have avoided this situation had I been a little bit more physically active before. And if you're not so much into working out, I just think going for walks, listening to a podcast, listening to some great music, listen to this podcast if you can, listen to the legacy list while you're out for your walks. And then, before you know it, you spent like 30 minutes walking and you come home refreshed and you're in a much better mood. So it's a win-win. And the reason that I say all the stuff is because I think mental, physical prep before the baby really allows you to be in a good headspace. Also, I didn't even acknowledge my haircut. I know I look like a little bit of a Stepford wife meets an Asian mom. Like, I think I look like a little bit of an Asian mom right now, but I'm really loving it. And the baby plays with the hair as well. Ariella will always play with the hair whenever I'm like changing her diaper. Anywho, the second theme that I want to cover is, it's titled Learn Before You're Sleep Deprived. So we prepare a lot for exams and for, let's say, if you're writing like the LSATs or the MCATs. And yeah, we do a lot of preparation for our careers in that sense, or our like academic goals. But I would say that the biggest role that we play is definitely being a parent, being that guiding light for young individuals and guiding them throughout their lives. And to prepare for that, it can be a bit daunting. And I know that I personally avoided educating myself a little bit just because I was so scared of the labor process. So again, I wish I had talked to someone um, about their labor experience and their postpartum recovery so that I was more well educated and not so scared. And then I wouldn't have felt so alone throughout the process. And in doing so, I feel like because I wrapped up my head in that so much, I avoided educating myself, if that makes any sense. I was just basically avoiding learning as much as I could because I was so scared of going into labor and I thought it was going to be so incredibly painful. I got epidural, so I didn't really feel anything. And I'm pretty sure it would have been super painful and uncomfortable had I not gotten epidural, but that was my saving grace. So I suggest reading at least one book. Read one baby book that is digestible. I'm not a huge reader. I want to read things that are like quick and short and easy to digest. And so that's why I actually picked up a book called The Simplest Baby Book in the World. And the reason why I chose this particular book is because it covers everything, like even including what are the most essential things you need for your nursery, how you should prepare your hospital bag, what sort of schedule you should have potentially for the baby, what the feed schedule is like, latching, like, et cetera, et cetera. So it covers a lot, and even the things that you wouldn't expect. And this book, when I got it after maybe like in the first month after giving birth. And it felt a little late to be getting this book. Like, I should have bought it beforehand so I could have bought the right things for myself. And going through it, I found that I easily got all the education that I needed. And there's also like schedules at the back that are really helpful. You can also download them. It's kind of like a dummies book. So that was my favorite thing about it, that it was just so concise and has these beautiful, like, funky illustrations as well. So I suggest the simplest baby book in the world. Again, it covers feeding, sleeping, diapers, all things baby, because trust me, like, you don't want to be Googling how to burp your baby properly at 3 a.m. And maybe you'll still be finding yourself to do that because there's so many different ways to burp a baby. Maybe your baby will be colic, hopefully not. But in that case, I know that I was doing that. I was figuring out like burping techniques, and even I was the one that was honestly in the labor room, and I was watching YouTube videos on breathing techniques to manage my contractions. And again, if I had just kind of educated myself on a little bit of the stuff related to what to expect for the labor and how it feels for your water to break and contractions, all that, then it would have been wiser for me to be watching that video on breathing techniques prior to. And then I also remember asking the nurse like a couple of foolish questions where I think she either answered me or gave very general information because she got the sense that I really didn't know what the heck was going to happen afterwards. Because I was like, oh, am I gonna get my period like right away, or does it come a little bit later on? Like, and I think she was just a little bit in shock, and she's having a baby, so you would think that she would know some of this basic stuff, but nope, this girl did not look into anything, and I distracted myself with the wrong things. And I know that that's pretty common. Like, you distract yourself with all the shopping related to the cute clothes, the baby shower, having fun with that, getting some cute maternity wear for yourself if you're into that, and decorating the whole nursery. So I think that can be a huge distraction. Number two, watch some key YouTube channels that you can refer to for specific reasons, and that can help avoid going down a rabbit hole and just wasting time with some general information. And so, one channel that I watched all throughout my pregnancy that gave a tracking of like how the baby was growing and what changes I was going through week by week was a channel called Diana in the Pink. She is a registered physician's assistant in the US, I believe, and she's super friendly, to the point, and she covers pretty much everything. And I love her channel because there's a frankness of how she shares information, but there's also an upbeat, exciting element of how she communicates everything. And of course, she's coming from her medical experience. So you get educated, and it's not like a boring dry video at all. I really like Diana in the Pink. Um, and then this particular channel, I might not be saying it right, so I'll like write out the actual name of the channel. So it's a couple. One is actually a pediatrician, and the other individual is, I believe, an OBGYN. So they're both doctors, and I think it's called Dr. Bjorkman. And they share very practical advice. And in some of the videos, they actually go through their own real time experience, or when they had their first child and their second child. And one video I really like watching was when she was in her sweats in what looked like the nursery room, and she looked so disheveled. And I love that she was super brave to come on to camera and talk about the different breast pumps she was using and what were the essential products that came in handy for surviving with the newborn in week one. I also watched their video on how to avoid a diaper rash, and when you do get a diaper rash, what to do with that. So they're super informative, and their videos are a little bit longer than Diana and the Pink just because they have more content to cover. But again, I love it. I love that they cover all things related to pregnancy, delivery, and the infant phase in terms of taking care of the baby. And then the third channel that I watched, mainly relating to latching and breast pumps, was Bridget Taylor's channel. So she's a doula who shares real birthing experiences. She really talks about what you can expect in terms of your labor experience. She also talks about postpartum recovery, latching, and has wonderful tips about breastfeeding, and how you can really improve your milk supply. And so her channel is super nice because I think I just love her, the warmth about her. There's a genuineness that she has in how she explains everything, and she's coming with so much knowledge. And it's so cute when she addresses like all the mamas, and she says like, "Mama, if you're dealing with this, you can do this," and "I'm with you, Mama. You're doing great, and you hang in there, and you're doing wonderful in terms of taking care of yourself and your baby." So she's super, super positive. That's Bridget Taylor. So that would be like the third channel that I recommend. Now let's get into the third theme. This is basically educating yourself on all things related to postpartum and nursing. The postpartum is super hard to deal with. It at one point feels like a gray cloud. And I remember saying this to, I believe, my mother-in-law, and I was saying like, why do people even bother having children? Because this is so hard. I was like, why do people do this? And I also remember saying this to my mom a couple of times where I'm like, I'm actually angry at all females. And she's like, why is that? I was like, they never told me that this was going to be so hard. No one told me. And then her rebuttal was so cute. She's like, well, you also didn't ask. You also didn't ask us how it feels after you give birth and what sort of things that you can expect that your body would be going through. So, you know, it's about speaking up and really asking those questions. It's important to not be so shy and to learn as much as you can. Be curious, be curious about what the female body's going to go through, and be excited for it if you can. um, So first, I'm going to talk about nursing. There's a lot to learn related to nursing. I would advise learning the correct latching techniques. There's tons of YouTube videos on that. Maybe even ask your mom friends what sort of latching techniques work for them. Breastfeeding positions, that's also important. I know a lot of moms go into that position where they kind of just like lay on the bed and like move to the side and kind of shove or like give their boob to the baby, and the baby can just be sleeping and you're kind of sleeping and they're feeding that way. I couldn't master that particular position, but I also was struggling with my milk supply as well. So we didn't even really get to that point. But learn about your different breastfeeding positions, the different ways that you could hold a baby while having the nursing pillow around your waist. Um, Also look into like the latching nipples. I think I that's not the exact terminology for them, but they're like a silicone nipple that you can attach onto yourself, and that can help with the latching. And then you do a technique where you kind of like put your finger in the baby's mouth to then take out that nipple so that then they are latching onto you. And that's to avoid them getting too dependent on that particular latching nipple. And if you can, look into the local resources that are available, such as the breastfeeding clinic in the hospital. I know locally right here in Milton, Ontario, I was allowed to have 2 breastfeeding consultant appointments in the hospital for free, covered by OHIP. And then beyond that, if I needed any other appointment, I would have to pay for it. If I consulted a breastfeeding lactation consultant on my own outside of the hospital, then there are fees associated with that. And then I would say what's very, very important is researching on the different types of breast pumps. Please, please, please do research on the different breast pumps that are available to you. And I know there's certain brands that are not sold in Canada. So, for example, like I really like the Spectra, and that was recommended to me by my lactation consultant. So I found out that my sister-in-law that lives in the US, she had it, so I borrowed it from her. I really wish I had bought one or at least 2 prior to giving birth, because then I would have been prepared. But I was so uninformed, I would say. Because I was kind of lactating already prior to giving birth, I thought that it was just going to flow like Niagara Falls. Like I was super, super naive as to how difficult it is to really train the baby to latch, how difficult it can be in terms of yourself learning the technique. It is a hands on skill, and it's a skill that takes time. It's not something that comes naturally to the baby or to yourself. So it requires some practice, basically. Um, and eventually, like you'll notice that your baby will just like kind of turn their head and like go to your nipple once they get used to feeding from you, and once you get a better grasp of how to do everything. But anywho, like I really wish I had bought at least 2 breast pumps. So I had one that was wireless, and you could charge it and then just like kind of go anywhere wherever you wanted to. It still was very visible in whatever you wear. So I'm not sure how people like step out in their wearing their breast pumps, maybe under like a sweatshirt. It's not very visible, but I personally didn't step out with it. And so the wireless one is super handy. It didn't increase my milk supply as much as I needed it to. So that's why I got a plug in the wall one, which was a big unit that had a lot of power. And believe it or not, there's also a lot of resources on how to run certain pumps properly. And I remember going on Instagram and finding an Instagram short video that actually highlighted the best way to use the Spectra and how you should change the settings in order to get the best milk supply under like 15 minutes. So I wrote it down quickly on a notepad and then repeated that particular technique over and over, and sure enough, it worked. So in some cases, like Instagram has helped me so much and educated me on so many things, even till now. Like I'm on that phase where the baby's on solids and I'm learning techniques on how much, not techniques, I would say like information about the type of foods that she can eat, and how much water she should consume, and the window of time between giving milk and giving solids. There's different information about out there, but it can be an excellent resource. And so, educate yourself as much as you can on breastfeeding and get that pump. That would be one big component. Another big component about nursing is be aware of your diet. And if anything, I think that it would be very helpful if I do have a child in the future to kind of adjust my diet prior to giving birth for the hope that I get a lot of milk supply. So oatmeal really helps increase your milk supply. Drinking as much water as you can really helps your milk supply. Eating as much as you can, whether it's healthy food or not so healthy food and takeout, like it doesn't, honestly, you're just trying to survive and you need so much energy because you burn a lot of calories from nursing. And it may not appear that way because to someone observing you, it just may think like, okay, just sitting around all day and you're feeding the baby and you're sleeping and just kind of like it looks like you're lounging. Boy, is it not lounging. It's like literally the hardest thing that one can do, in my opinion. And I actually honestly believe that nursing is harder than the pregnancy phase. Like it's honestly a huge mental discipline that's required in keeping up with pumping, keeping up with feeding on time, having the discipline to learn the lactation technique properly, using the pillow properly, sleeping as much as possible, keeping yourself hydrated. So, anyways, going back to the diet, drink a lot of water. I learned a hack from one of my family members that drinking body armor, which is an electrolyte drink, can really increase your milk supply. And she mentioned it, and then I recall like kind of like filing it in the back of my head and then applying the different tips that she gave me. And then all of a sudden one day I was like, wait a sec, didn't I just see someone in the ER? I saw another mom of a baby that had a body armor in her stroller. And I was like, wait a sec, I remember getting the tip that that increases your milk supply. I should definitely order that. So once I got that through Amazon and I drank at least one throughout the day and I mixed it with water as well, it was golden. Like it was so good. It really helped me improve my milk supply. And sometimes I also combined it with ice, a little bit of water, and with coconut water. Coconut water can also be very helpful too. I don't think coconut water helped me as much, but body armor definitely did. So stay hydrated for sure. And oatmeal, I mentioned that. I ate that for breakfast every day. Having certain supplements is really key. So it was my lactation consultant that helped me with this. And she mentioned this probably a couple of weeks afterwards when I followed up with her and I said that like, hey, like my milk supply is still not increasing. And I think part of it was that I was getting so many night sweats that it was hard for me to get up at nighttime to feed the baby. And so, because I wasn't feeding her at every feed for myself, that was decreasing my milk supply. And that's another thing to note. Like, if you don't, the more you release your milk, the more milk you produce. And I wasn't releasing it as often because A, I didn't get a breast pump in time, and B, I had those freaking night sweats that made me so cold that I just didn't want to take my top off. Like, it was quite miserable time. But anywho, I consulted her afterwards and I said, like, hey, my milk supply went down again. So what can I do to boost it up? And she recommended fenugreek supplements and moringa leaf supplements as well. And then I would also drink every single day fennel seed tea. That really helps. And adjusting your diet, very important. Eating as much as possible, very important. And in terms of prep before baby, if possible, I think that it's wonderful to actually freeze some meals beforehand. If you can get a family member to maybe cook up some meals for you before you give birth as well, and they can freeze some meals for you, that's super helpful because, yes, you'll be eating out here and there too. You're going to be getting takeout, but to eat a home cooked meal, whether it's fresh or not, like, and you take it out, it's frozen, like, that is way more beneficial for you to eat. Another thing, and this isn't maybe I don't know if it's related to like a diet thing for nursing, but it's definitely very important for overall like recovery for postpartum is to drink bone broth. Any sort of broth is very helpful for your recovery to build up that strength. Because that the strength that you need to like take care of yourself and to take care of the baby, it really is a village at that time, and it's very helpful if you can have someone to take care of you a little bit, so that you can feed the baby, and recovery of the body is super important for that. So that was bone broth. Look up like any sort of recipes you can find. Even regular chicken noodle soup, super good for you as well. And then in terms of maintaining your milk supply, what's really important is sleep. So if you sleep really well, if you can possibly, if you can do like night shifts with your partner in terms of waking up to take care of the baby, that would be wonderful. The more you sleep, the more milk you can produce. And the supply that you have in the morning is golden. Like it's really key. You tend to have more supply in the morning because you've rested. And over time, as the day goes on, your supply kind of dwindles. And don't be worried if you have like ebbs and flows in terms of your supply. Sometimes you're going to have a lot, and sometimes it's going to dip a little bit, but you can get it back up and running through diet change, rest, and to honestly just keep me in positive mindset. That's very, very much key. My family member did mention this to me, and she said that if it's like a psychological game. Like if you don't stress about it, then the milk really comes. And at some point, it was also suggested to me that if you just stop using your breast pump and don't rely on it as heavily and get to the point where you can just feed from yourself, then suddenly your milk supply will pick up and give as much as the baby needs. I unfortunately didn't get to that phase. And at one point it was like no milk was coming. So I was like, I think the faucet is dried up now. So we're fine. And it was one of those things where I almost felt as though the pumping thing and the triple feeding schedule that I was doing was actually causing me more stress and not allowing me to enjoy my baby. It was not allowing me to enjoy motherhood. And I thought that that was my version of postpartum depression. I was like, this is very depressing and annoying, and this is a whole world that I don't want to participate in. But at the same time, as I said, like it requires a lot of discipline. And I just told myself, like, I'm going to take it week by week. And I think I pumped and nursed for about 3.5, 4-ish months. And I'm proud of myself that I still took it that far. Because what I'm trying to say is keep a positive mindset, even if your supply is low. Keep a positive mindset so that your supply can get up. Maybe watch a relaxing movie. So it's all about oxytocin. Like everything related to pregnancy, I found that oxytocin needs to be released from the brain in order for some magic to happen with your body. That needed to be like that key hormone that's released in order for the contractions to happen and your possibly your water to break as well. I remember reading about that. And then they also gave me oxytocin in the hospital. Again, a feel good hormone, but you want that feel good hormone throughout your body so that the milk supply can be there too. Um, so that would be my tip to myself as well. For next time around, don't stress as much, and also don't compare your milk supply to those influencers out there. You don't know what kind of resources they have and how they might be being dishonest potentially about their milk supply. So look into what you can do. Be proud of yourself for what you can do and keep it up for however long you can. And then also don't shame yourself if you do choose to stop at a certain point because you just can't do it anymore. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. As I say, fed is best. So as long as your baby's growing, that's super, super good. Hi, guys. That concludes part one of the episode titled What I Wish I Knew Before Having a Baby. I'm doing part one and part two because I spoke so much and shared so much information that this episode would be ridiculously long if I kept it as one episode. So we're going to do a part one and a part two. So this is part one. Please tune into part two once that is launched as well. And see ya. Bye. Like and subscribe.